They told everyone I was crazy, so I made sure they saw the truth. I didn't wake up one day and suddenly get called crazy. It doesn't happen like that. It starts quietly. People who once smiled at you start hesitating when you walk into a room. Friends you've laughed with for years suddenly keep their distance. Family starts asking if you're okay. Not because they care, but because they've already been told you aren't. And before you know it, there's this version of you floating around, built out of whispers and twisted stories. And it doesn't matter who you really are anymore. Because people believe what they want to believe. Especially when the person feeding them the story is charming enough. Especially when they want the story to be true. And me, that's exactly where I found myself. The crazy one. The overreactor. The jealous girlfriend. The girl who, apparently, couldn't keep it together. It didn't matter that I'd spent months feeling like something in my life was off. It didn't matter that I'd started questioning things because I was noticing real patterns, real lies, and not some wild imagination. All anyone saw was what Marcus wanted them to see. Sweet, calm, patient Marcus, the man who told everyone he just wanted peace while quietly painting me as the problem. And for a while I stayed quiet. I swallowed it. Tried to explain myself to people who weren't listening. Tried to defend myself against stories I didn't even know were being told until they'd already made their rounds. But what nobody realized, not Marcus, not his friends, not even my own family, was that I wasn't crazy. I was tired. And there's a big difference between a woman losing her mind and a woman finally deciding to show everyone exactly who they're dealing with. I've never been the type of woman to chase drama. If anything, I spent most of my life avoiding it. I've always been the quiet one, the one who listens more than she talks, the one who keeps her circle small, the one people come to when they need calm instead of chaos. I'm not perfect. I'll never claim that. But crazy? That's never been me. What I am is loyal. Maybe to a fault. I give people the benefit of the doubt until they give me a reason not to. I like routine. I like peace. I like knowing the people in my life mean what they say. And for a long time, I thought Marcus was one of those people. We met through mutual friends. He was funny without trying too hard, patient without being passive. The kind of guy who asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't arrogant. He just seemed real. And after a few years of watching friends navigate messy relationships and constant games, real felt rare. So when he wanted to take things slow, I didn't question it. When he wanted time to himself, I respected it. When he wasn't big on social media or sharing every detail of our life online, I didn't see that as a red flag. I thought that's what healthy adults did. They communicated. They gave each other space. They trusted without needing proof every 5 minutes. But what I didn't realize at the time, what I wouldn't learn until much later, was that trust only works when both people are playing by the same rules. And Marcus? He'd been playing a very different game from the start. In the beginning, Marcus made it easy to trust him. He was steady in a way I hadn't experienced before. He wasn't chasing attention. He wasn't juggling exes or playing hot and cold. He showed up on time. He remembered things I said in passing. He knew when to give me space and when to lean in closer. He was the first person in a long time who made me feel like I could breathe. I remember thinking, finally someone who didn't need to be convinced I was worth their time. Finally someone who wasn't constantly comparing me to the last girl or treating me like a placeholder until something better came along. He was good at being exactly what I needed, when I needed it. Looking back now, I realize that's because he was paying attention. Not in a caring way, but in a calculating one. He was learning how I moved, what I responded to, what made me feel safe. And he used all of it to build a version of himself I'd never think to question. I wish I could say the change happened suddenly, that there was a moment I could point to where the mask slipped and I knew. But it didn't happen like that. It was slow, like erosion. Little comments that made me doubt myself. Half-truths followed by apologies. Plans that got canceled last minute. Stories that didn't quite line up. Nothing dramatic. Nothing big enough to set off alarms. Just small shifts. Small inconsistencies. Moments I chalked up to stress or bad timing, or maybe even me being too sensitive. Because that's what he wanted. He didn't want to control me with fear. He wanted to confuse me with doubt. And the worst part? It worked. For a while it really worked. The thing about gaslighting, real gaslighting, is that it never feels obvious when you're in the middle of it. It sneaks up on you. And it doesn't start with someone calling you crazy to your face. It starts with doubt. At first, it was little things. I'd mention a conversation we had, something small, something normal, and Marcus would look at me like I'd just made it up. "I never said that." Or, "You must have misunderstood me." Sometimes he'd even laugh, like it was funny that I remembered things so differently. And because these weren't big fights or dramatic situations, I didn't question it. I told myself maybe I had misheard. Maybe I was reading too much into things. That's how it starts. Little seeds planted slowly, until you find yourself second-guessing things you know for a fact actually happened. It wasn't just words either. He started pulling back in ways I couldn't quite put my finger on. Canceling plans. Taking longer to respond to texts. Being busy, all the time, but somehow never really telling me what he was so busy doing. And when I asked, the response was always the same. Calm. Casual. "I told you about that already. You knew I had plans. You really need to work on listening." It's embarrassing to admit now how quickly I started questioning myself. Because I've never been the forgetful one. I'm the person who remembers birthdays, who knows what day we talked about dinner, who keeps track of the little stuff most people don't notice. But somehow, with Marcus, I found myself apologizing for things I didn't do. Apologizing for asking normal questions. Apologizing for feeling confused. That's when I knew something wasn't right. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in that deep, sinking way where your gut knows long before your heart is ready to catch up. Something about Marcus didn't add up. And whatever it was, I had a feeling I hadn't even seen the worst of it yet. It didn't take long before the little things started turning into bigger things. Marcus had this way of making every uncomfortable situation feel like it was somehow my fault. And not in an obvious, aggressive way either. That would have been easy to spot. It was more subtle than that, so subtle that I almost didn't notice how often I found myself confused in my own relationship. If I brought up something that hurt my feelings, he'd spin it. If I caught him in an inconsistency, he'd smile and tell me I was overthinking. I'd point out that he never mentioned a night out, one I only found out about because someone posted a picture. And suddenly I was keeping tabs on him. He turned simple conversations into landmines. Things I knew we talked about, dinner plans, a weekend trip, even what time he said he'd be home, somehow disappeared. He was always so calm about it too. Like I was the only one in the world making life harder than it needed to be. "You need to stop stressing over every little thing," he told me once, after I asked why he hadn't called me back for 6 hours. 6 hours. And I sat there wondering if maybe he was right. Maybe I was stressing too much. Maybe I was expecting too much. That's the danger of people like Marcus. They don't come in swinging. They come in slowly, wrapping you up in a version of reality where you can't tell what's normal anymore. And because I loved him, because I trusted him, I let it slide. Not all at once. Not blindly. But enough. Enough to start doubting myself. Enough to stay quiet when I should have spoken louder. Enough to stay longer than I should have stayed. Because people like Marcus don't just lie to you. They teach you how to lie to yourself too. What I didn't know, at least not at first, was that Marcus wasn't just gaslighting me behind closed doors. He was rewriting the story for everyone else too. While I was sitting in our apartment trying to make sense of what was happening between us, he was out laying the groundwork. To friends. To his coworkers. Even to some of mine. He was telling a version of events where I wasn't confused or hurt. I was unstable. I wasn't struggling, I was paranoid. I wasn't asking questions, I was causing drama. And he did it so quietly that by the time I realized what was happening, the damage was already done. I'd walk into a room and feel it. That shift in energy. That silence that follows your presence, like people had just been talking about you, but didn't expect you to show up. There was this one time I came to a mutual friend's birthday party. Something I almost didn't go to, but I was trying to keep the peace. And the second I arrived, the host gave me this tight, fake smile. Then she pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay at home, her voice low, like she was being gentle with someone fragile. And I realized then people didn't just believe Marcus. They wanted to believe him, because it was easier to trust the calm, smiling man than the woman who'd started pulling back. Easier to side with the guy who shrugged and said, "She's just been under a lot of stress," than to sit with the possibility that maybe the woman wasn't overreacting. Maybe she was just tired of being lied to. That was when I understood I wasn't just losing Marcus. I was slowly being pushed out of my own life. And the worst part? He never once raised his voice. He never had to. He just told the story first, and let the silence do the rest. I wish I could say there was one big, dramatic moment that broke me. Something obvious. Something public. But that's not how it happened. With Marcus, the breaking point wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It came like everything else he did. Slow, quiet, and deliberate. It happened on a night that should have been nothing. We were supposed to meet for dinner after work. Nothing fancy. Just a casual meal at a little spot we'd gone to a dozen times before. I texted him to confirm like I always did, and like always, he told me he was running late. But something about it sat wrong. I couldn't explain it, couldn't point to any proof, but I knew. So I went anyway. And when I walked into that restaurant, already bracing for whatever excuse he had lined up, I didn't find Marcus sitting alone. He wasn't there with a coworker. He wasn't sitting at the bar scrolling through his phone. He was sitting at a back table with another woman. Close. Laughing. Relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. And the worst part wasn't even that he was on a date. It was the look on his face when he saw me standing there. Not shock. Not guilt. Just calm. Like he'd planned for me to see him. Like he wanted me to react. Wanted me to make a scene. Wanted me to prove to whoever she was, and anyone else who might have been watching, that I was the unstable, overreacting girlfriend he'd told everybody about. That was the moment everything clicked for me. It wasn't just about lies anymore. It wasn't about avoiding conversations or escaping accountability. Marcus was setting me up. Piece by piece, he was building a version of me that looked unhinged. And that night, that's when I decided I wasn't giving him what he wanted. If he thought I was crazy, he was about to find out just how calm a woman could be when she stopped caring about appearances and started caring about receipts. After that night, everything changed. But not in the way Marcus thought it would. He probably expected me to lose it, to yell, to cry, to embarrass myself in the middle of that restaurant and give him exactly the performance he'd been setting me up for. But I didn't. I left. Quietly. I walked right past him, past the woman sitting across from him, past whatever story he was about to tell about me next. And when I got home, I didn't rage text him or blow up his phone. I didn't go on social media. I didn't call friends looking for sympathy. I sat in my apartment, in that quiet space where clarity starts to settle in, and I made a decision. If Marcus wanted to paint me as crazy, I wasn't going to argue with him. I wasn't going to play defense in a story he was writing without me. What I was going to do, carefully, calmly, patiently, was collect the truth. Because the thing about people like Marcus is that they never expect you to stop reacting. They count on the fact that you'll stay emotional, stay loud, stay predictable. They don't know what to do with silence. They don't know what to do with someone who steps back, watches, and waits. And so that's exactly what I did. I started paying attention, not just to what he was saying, but to what he was doing. I stopped letting little things slide. Every inconsistency, I saved it. Every weird text, screenshot. Every lie he told that didn't line up with something he'd said before, noted. I wasn't waiting for him to confess. I wasn't waiting for him to fall apart. I was building a timeline, piece by piece, proof by proof. Because when the time came, I didn't want a screaming match. I wanted receipts. And Marcus had no idea that I was already collecting every single one. Once I started paying attention, it was honestly shocking how sloppy Marcus really was. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't think he had to. He was so used to controlling the story, so used to me second-guessing myself, that it never even occurred to him that I might stop playing along. And once I stopped reacting emotionally, once I stopped questioning him and started documenting everything instead, I saw everything more clearly than I ever had before. It wasn't just about the other woman at the restaurant. It was patterns. The late-night work meetings that didn't line up. The receipts for bars and dinners when he claimed he was home early. Phone calls that disconnected the second I walked into the room. Little things. Things most people wouldn't catch. But I wasn't most people anymore. I stopped trying to catch him red-handed in the moment. Instead, I let him talk. I let him spin whatever version of reality he was comfortable with, while I quietly built my own. I took pictures of text threads, saved voice notes, forwarded emails to myself just in case he ever tried to delete them. And I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not friends. Not family. Not even the people who'd quietly asked me if things were okay. Because I didn't want backup. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't need validation. I needed proof. Proof that would speak louder than any story Marcus had told about me behind my back. Proof that didn't require me to yell or cry or fight. Just facts. Clean. Simple. Undeniable. And the thing about facts is, they don't need an audience to be powerful. They just need to exist. And I had more than enough. By the time I was done gathering everything, I didn't feel like a woman falling apart. I felt like a woman standing in the middle of a house she didn't build, holding the blueprints to every single lie that man ever told. When the opportunity finally came, I didn't plan some big confrontation. It just sort of fell into place. Marcus's sister was having a small get-together. Nothing fancy, just a birthday dinner with family and a few mutual friends. He wanted me there, of course. Probably thought it would look suspicious if I didn't show up. Or maybe he thought enough time had passed that I'd cooled down, forgotten things, gone back to normal. But I hadn't forgotten. And I definitely hadn't cooled down. I just hadn't reacted the way he expected me to. So when I walked in that night, I didn't come carrying anger. I came with something a lot heavier. Proof. I waited until after dinner. Let people eat, laugh, drink, enjoy themselves. I made small talk. Smiled when I needed to. Watched Marcus do his usual thing. Being overly charming, overly polite, putting on a show for people who still believed he was the good guy. And then, when everyone was finally settled in the living room, I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I simply said there were a few things I needed to clear up, not just for myself, but for everyone who'd been told a story that wasn't true. And then I passed out the evidence. Printed screenshots. Voicemails. Photos. Dates and times and contradictions. No commentary. No accusations. Just facts. Marcus tried to laugh it off at first, made a few jokes, shrugged, tried to act like I was being extra. But the room got quiet. People stopped smiling. And I could see it. That moment when the story he'd told started unraveling in front of the very people he'd convinced. He couldn't control the room anymore. The truth was doing the talking now. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel crazy. I felt clear. And that was all I'd wanted from the beginning. Once the truth was out there, things shifted fast. Not in a dramatic, screaming match kind of way. There wasn't a huge blow-up or people flipping tables. It was quieter than that. And honestly, that's what made it better. Because loud arguments come and go. But silence? Silence stays. That night, nobody looked at Marcus the same way. He tried to laugh. Tried to talk through it. Tried to act like the things I laid out in front of everyone were somehow old news or misunderstood. But nobody was buying it. You could feel it in the room. That uncomfortable stillness when people start realizing they've been lied to. That slow sinking feeling when the mask finally slips and the person sitting next to you isn't who you thought they were. It was in the way people sat back from him on the couch just a little. The way his sister's smile faded completely. The way his best friend, the one who used to defend him no matter what, didn't say a single word. And Marcus? He could feel it too. He didn't yell. He didn't apologize. But his eyes kept darting around the room like he was looking for someone, anyone, to jump in and save him. But nobody did. Because when people finally see the truth laid out in front of them, they stop defending the lie. After that night, it didn't take long for the rest of his life to catch up with him. People distanced themselves. The little rumors he'd spread about me got quieter. Friends stopped texting him back. And that easy charm he'd used for so long just stopped working. Because now everyone knew. Not because I shouted. Not because I caused a scene. But because the truth didn't need me to fight for it. It just needed to be seen. And after that, Marcus was exactly who he'd always been. The only difference was, now, everybody else knew it too. It's funny. When I look back now, I don't feel anger the way I thought I would. You'd think after everything Marcus put me through, the lies, the gaslighting, the way he went out of his way to twist the story, I'd feel this huge rush of satisfaction watching his life slowly fall apart. But that's not really what stayed with me. What stayed with me was the peace. Not loud, not flashy, just quiet peace. Because for the longest time, Marcus tried to convince everyone that I was crazy. And maybe for a while, I even started to believe it. Not because I was actually unstable, but because when you're surrounded by people treating you like a problem, it's easy to start questioning your own reality. But here's what I learned, and what I'll never forget. Crazy was never the problem. Crazy was never even the point. People like Marcus call you crazy when they're afraid of what happens if you stay calm long enough to collect the truth. They want you reactive. They want you messy. Because it makes it easier to discredit everything you say. But silence? Patience? Proof? That's what they can't survive. And in the end, I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to beg people to believe me. I didn't need revenge. I needed clarity. And once I had that, Marcus didn't just lose me. He lost every version of me he thought he could control. He lost the story. He lost the room. And the best part, I walked away with everything he never expected me to have. My peace, my dignity, and my own voice. Untouched, unbothered, and finally free.
Thanks so much for watching. If you love a good revenge story, or if you've ever dreamed of getting the last word without saying much at all, you're in the right place. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new savage ending. Because around here, karma always hits different.